Happy Wednesday. Happy St. Patty's Day. You are not seeing double. There is another episode of the Wolff Den. If you joined us earlier, we had Mark Moyer on. He is with Win Again Academy. They are the sponsor of this show, the Wolff Den. But today in the afternoon, we have Alex Sinatra joining us, and we are going to talk about your potential for everything, literally and figuratively, right?
Yes, we're going to talk all about what you can do and how you answer that question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
So great. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. We've been on some shows before, like our Learning. You've been a panelist on our Learning LinkedIn before and been very helpful. Tell everybody, what is your potential for everything?
Yes. So I am an attorney and a marketer. I work in the sports industry. I am also a writer for USA Today on the NFL. And so for me, I have always been someone that's done a lot of different things. And we grew up in a society where when you ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? You're supposed to give one answer. And that has always been very, very difficult for me because I wanted to be multiple things. And so when I came across this video on TED Talk, it was from Emily Wapniak, and she talked about being a multi-potentialite, which is like a Renaissance person, someone who's able to do a lot of different things. And that's where my idea for your potential for everything sprang from, because you do have the potential to do more than one thing if that's what you want. If you're not a specialist, you want to do multiple things, fantastic. You can, but it's all about planning it strategically so that you make sure you're actually devoting the right amount of time to everything.
Can you be, the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none. Can you be the master of multiple trades?
I think that you can. I'm the one that's doing it now, so I definitely believe it's possible.
Yeah, so with all the interaction we have, I know you're in the esports world now. I know about your podcast, so we'll talk a little bit about that. I knew you were an attorney, but I don't see a lot of you talking about practicing it. So tell us a little bit about the law stuff. I married an attorney. She's now a magistrate judge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yes. So I'm a sports attorney and an esports attorney. I also do a lot of transactional work as well. So right now I am working for a law firm as an of counsel, which means that I am working part-time for them, giving them advice, helping them with clients when they need that. All of the sports and entertainment work that comes through that law firm heads over to me. And so that's what I'm doing right now. My last full-time position, I was the in-house counsel of a professional soccer team. So a lot of people are very surprised when they hear that sports teams need attorneys. And then I tell them, well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that really needs to be negotiated well. Sponsorship deals, ticket deals, name, image, and likeness, all of these different things, leases, right? So that is a little bit about what I did in my last full-time role. And right now I am working for a law firm doing sports and entertainment as an of counsel.
So how much of your time is spent being an attorney?
I would say it's about 50-50. 50% of my time is an entrepreneur and building my business, and 50% of the time I'm an attorney, but I always have my attorney hat on. I mean, you know that. I mean, You're married to an attorney, right? You're always thinking as an attorney would think, which gives you a very unique perspective on everything that you touch.
Well, she told me, and we got another, Rob and Bren, friends of the program. Thanks for joining in and joining the conversation. Yeah, my wife, so we did a Learning LinkedIn Open to Work. We've been highlighting some candidates, and she keeps reminding me to give a disclaimer that, we're not giving legally any advice. And I always forget to do it until about halfway through. But yeah, so anything that you say here is not legal advice for anyone. It's just
exactly. And it's just my opinion, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any entity or organization or team or client. It's just solely my experiences and not legal advice.
Yeah, exactly. The right side of my face is getting sunburned. Yeah, the sun is strong here in Florida. He likes to make fun of my lighting. He needs to come up with some new jokes. But anyway, we'll move on. The lighting is bad. I will give him that. And it's even worse today. I don't really understand it. But that's it. That's what the Wolff Den is all about. We're just kind of going with the flow, and
I love it.
Why we're not?
I love going with the flow.
That's why we're not a late night talk show on CBS yet.
Not yet.
I say yeah. That's what we'd love to have something like this, because I love just having these just having these conversations with so many interesting people doing interesting things, some stuff that you're real passionate about, some stuff that you've never even heard of before,
Mm-hmm.
be introduced to these things. What do you find inspiring, and where do you get your, I guess, content from that you're absorbing content?
Yes. So on my podcast, I pick a particular topic that I find interesting that I generally have some type of knowledge about. And then I go searching for individuals who can flesh out that knowledge for me, who become guests on the podcast. Because selfishly, I want to learn more about that particular topic. So it's almost like I'm requesting a master class from each of my guests. And
Yeah.
so that's how I figure out the topics that I want to do. And then I also kind of figure out like, what questions am I consistently getting in my inbox? What questions are people DMing me? What are they interested in learning about? And that's how I start to brainstorm what my next slate of topics will be. So right now on my podcast, I'm talking all about health and wellness. And each of my guests is some type of quote unquote expert in the field, but they dabble in many industries. So almost every one of my guests is a multi-potentialite or a Renaissance person as well. And so right now we're talking about how the heck you could be more healthy and well, especially during the pandemic, especially during this work from home life. Everything is so crazy. And each of my guests gives just tips, very easy things that you can implement, like making sure you have a consistent bedtime, making sure that when you wake up in the morning, you open your blinds and you try to get sun as soon as you can in the morning, drinking water, having a digital sunset. I mean, there's all these different things that my guests are giving me tips on and my listeners on. And then I write a book about it, a short book. It takes about an hour and a half to 3 hours to read. They're available on Amazon under the Your Potential for Everything guide. So it's a little bit about selfishness of what I want to learn, but also where do I have those passions or those insights and who can I get to come on the show?
Yeah, I need to wire my mouth shut. That's the way I'll get healthier. I stopped eating during this pandemic. There was nothing else to do. Work and eat, and then work late and eat more. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, one of my guests talked about nutrition, and
Yeah.
she said that if you just add more green leafy vegetables and berries to your plate and start that way without taking anything away, that you'll see a difference in your health. So I thought that was a fresh take on it. Instead of saying like, what can't you eat? She said, this is what you should be adding.
Yeah, your podcast is great. I recommend everyone taking a listen. I have a couple episodes. So
Yes, you do.
You can start there. But the great thing about your podcast is the way that what you do with it, and you're splicing it. We talked about this, to get these blurbs and people have such great, these little bits of knowledge that I'm not telling you not to listen to the whole thing, but it kind of highlights like, what is that person going to bring to the table? It's a really great tease into it. Eventually we're going to have, I talked to you about this, we're going to have the Wolff Den, where you'll be able to kind of pick what part of the interview you want to, or episode you want to watch. How hard is that to do? How long does that take you? The podcast, a lot of people, one of the big things that prevent people from doing a podcast is the amount of time it takes.
Yes. Yes. So I would suggest that if you have even a tiny little budget, that you hire a producer to do the back end work. So for me, I have a man named Mark McDonald, and he is my producer for my podcast. He spent 30 years at the BBC being a producer. He is highly credentialed, and he does not charge that much. I mean, for my budget, it's very, very great, considering I talk to other people who charge like a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
And so for him, I record the podcast like we're doing. I record the intro. I write all the show notes. I create all the graphics. And then I send him the audio and I send him the show notes, and he edits everything and he uploads it. And then he creates those really cool snippets that you were talking about on Wave or Audiogram. They're called audiograms. And he creates it there. And I don't think it takes that much time. But again, I don't do it, so I'm not sure. I have created an audiogram on Wave before, and it took me maybe 10 minutes. Once I got the clip that I wanted, then I just popped it in there and looked at the transcript, and yeah, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's, there's a lot of really good production value of a podcast. Now, you need the content, right? That'll get you there. so you're going to need the content. And I think it's great. I think you hit some milestone last year. Did you hit a milestone on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hitting milestones. I hit 6 out of 7 continents listenership on 6 out of 7, which is pretty friggin' cool.
Yeah.
Especially because it's only about 7-8 months old. And so for me, it was really uplifting that people found it insightful. Because, I mean, you're a content creator as well. Like, you like what you're creating, but when someone else is like, wow, that really helped me, or you helped me get a job, or whatever it may be, that's what really makes you feel great about what you're doing and pushes you through. Even when, like me, my computer crashed and I lost like 6 weeks worth of content, 6 episodes that I had done.
That's a lot
I
of
lost.
time and effort.
It was so awful. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to redo these because people need to hear what these guests were going to say. And I was like, because people have told me that it really helps them. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll do them all again.
You had to get the people to do them also, right?
Yeah. And the people had to like re-record everything with me. It was, yeah. But everyone was so kind and understanding because I told them what happened. I said, listen, I didn't put these to Dropbox. I kept them on my computer because I didn't want to overload my producer with like 6 full-length episodes uploaded at once. And that ended up screwing me. And so now it's gone. And they were like, that's fine. We'll just reschedule with you. And yeah, and they turned out really well. People are really loving the health and wellness episode. And my next series is all about esports. So I'm really excited about that as well.
That's esports is blowing. I have some great guests for you if you need. I know you're really involved with esports, but I do have some good people that I've met along the way because I've been joining the ESTA calls, networking calls.
Yeah.
Megan, I know you're a part of it. That you guys have something coming up.
Yeah, there is a conference the 23rd and 24th of March for the Esports Trade Association. Yep.
Yeah, so I know they're doing great things. The people over there are great. I will get more involved eventually, but esports is not a huge target for me necessarily, but the people are great in it and it's blowing up like crazy. So it's definitely something it was probably going to be the biggest story until these NFT stuff started hitting. Right? Now they put it sports a little bit. But once they get back in, I think they'll take a new leap. I'd be curious to see the people's episodes side by side of the original and the redo to see how close did they get to saying the same thing and how did it go? Because I'm like, when you're not on a script and you're just having conversations, you could ask me the same question every week. And I'll probably have the same similar answer, but I'll be saying it a little bit differently because I haven't practiced it, which is not to say it's bad. I'd be curious to see how close some people have their thing like set and they know this is what I'm saying. And sometimes I think you can hear that in what they're trying to say. Or having a conversation and kind of talking about what you're about. So that's just an observation. I'm interested to do that. The other thing for me, and I'm curious on your opinion, so much of what we consume is common sense. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. And I say the bad thing about that is, look, it's common sense. It's like, do we really need to pay or have to sit through a lot of this stuff to just hear the stuff that we already know? And the flip side of that is, and we did this on our first Learning LinkedIn session, was like, check your phone to make sure you're connected with everyone on your phone. Now that's common sense, right? There's nothing groundbreaking about that, but people don't think about it. There's just things you don't think about. So, there is common sense that you need to be reminded of. And then there's common sense like, oh, this guy's telling me the same thing. You go to the conferences and it's the same thing over and over again. How do you, try and balance between the two on what you're looking at here for content?
Yes. So for me, I'm always going to be learning something new, even if it's like a similar concept, right? Like you're always going to learn something that's a little bit different. And so for me, I kind of used to be of that mind where it's like, oh, there's a webinar about X. I already know about X. I'm not going to tune in. However, when I started saying, okay, I have more to learn, like I don't know everything about this topic, even though I'm a licensed attorney, I've been practicing for a while, like I have, worked on big things, I should probably still go to the CLE because I could learn something new. And times are changing all the time, especially with technology, right? I mean, all the time, every day there's something new. So for me, I'm like, I don't know everything. I could probably learn something new. I'm going to tune in. But in terms of, the content that I create, when I have a guest on, as you know, because you're a guest on both the Side Hustle series and the Entrepreneurship series, I will send questions to the individuals. I curate specific questions based upon their background. And I make sure that when I am doing an episode, if people have similar backgrounds, I'm asking them different questions about their particular experience, right? Because their experience, even if it's on the same thing, is going to have totally different wisdom coming out of it. So that's how I go into all of my appearances. That's how I go into interviews. That's how I'm interviewing people. Like, teach me. I want to learn something new from you, or I want to learn about a new perspective on something I already know.
Yeah, it's funny that the contrast between your podcast and my show. I'm like, Alex, just show up and let's talk. And part of it is because that's how I like it, and part of it is just I don't have the time or the resources to do it the other way. And I think it's fine. I think people are hesitant to do things and put out content because they're thinking it's not perfect. And I always say, get it out there, because you're probably going to be your toughest critic for one on things, right? And then, go learn as you go. I mean, I could tell you I'm probably infinitely better now in this, our 30-second episode than I was the first 5. You get a little bit more comfortable about it. You understand what might work, what might not work. And so, someday I might have that real structured. I think it's great that you have it too, because, I see what you're trying to do with the podcast, and I think it's working. And, I just think it's great. But it's funny how you can just kind of, I always encourage people to just do it, right? That's the hardest part, to just do it. And with the multi-potentialite, or even an entrepreneur, if you're focusing on one thing, that's really the toughest. Someone asked me, what would you recommend if I'm looking to do this? I would say, just go and do it. Just start it. Just take that first step and then go. What would you say to encourage people who might have an idea and are a little bit hesitant to do it?
Yeah, for the most part, done is better than perfect, right? Having a product or a piece of content that you can put out is better than never putting anything out or never getting started at all. You are going to fail, and you just need to recognize that you're going to fail. And that's not what defines you. What defines you is the action you take after the failure, what you do the next day. That is what's really important, what you learn from the failure, right? Because every piece of content that I put out is not a game winner. No entity has a game-winning piece of content every single time that they produce content, right? You're just trying to produce the best that you can with the resources and time that you have. So definitely just go and do it. And for me, I have been in front of the camera for 20 odd something years now, maybe more than that, because I'm an acting and modeling agent for 15 years. So I'm very comfortable in front of the camera. I'm comfortable with a very structured and formatted interview process. I am stoked when I am asked to be on the Wolff Den and get to just talk. That's amazing as well for me. But a lot of people get very scared when they don't have structure. And so for me, if you're really kind of nervous about putting out content, just do something really simple and really short. Go onto Clubhouse and get into a room and just talk for 5 seconds on a topic. Put a 1-minute long video, a 20-second video on LinkedIn. LinkedIn only allows 20-second videos. Create a reel on Instagram. Go onto TikTok and create a short video. Any of that is going to give you a modicum of confidence. And the more and more and more you do it, you're going to be like Matt and me. You're just going to be able to just shoot the crap with each other live on LinkedIn, and people tuning in, tuning out, doing whatever.
Right?
So done is better than perfect. Just get out there.
How active are you on Clubhouse?
I'm on Clubhouse pretty much every day, talking about something in sport or in the podcasting scene as well there. But usually I'm talking in rooms about women in sports and women in business. Those are the main topics that I'm talking about. I do a lot of sports talking there and a lot of legal talk as well. I'm a part of a bunch of attorney groups as well. And for people who don't know, Clubhouse is a new social media invite-only app, and it's a drop-in app, and it's just audio, and it is a lot of fun.
It certainly can be. I actually have extra invites if anyone needs it. So if you know anyone who needs an invite or anyone listening there wants to go in, just you need an iPhone because it's only available on iOS, not Android yet. And I'd be happy to give you an invite. My suggestion for Clubhouse would be, if you're not going to speak, there's not a big reason to be in that. There's a lot of great people talking, but if you're not going to click, speak, and get up on stage and at least introduce yourself, I think you're really missing out on what it could be.
I agree. I think that there is a place for people to listen because you can click on people's profile and connect with them off of Clubhouse. So I think that that's a really good way to network by saying, I was listening to you in this room. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn or via Instagram and set up a quick 15-minute call. So it's an interesting way for introverts to connect. Because as I've told you before, people wouldn't believe it, but I am an introvert. I would much rather sit on my couch drinking coffee and reading a book than out at a networking event. So for me, Clubhouse is the perfect platform for me to network because I don't have to be on video. I can sit on my couch. I can jump in and out of rooms if I'm not feeling like I'm vibing with that particular topic or the speakers there. So I'm a big fan of it. And I tell all my introvert friends, Clubhouse is for you.
I think it all is. For me, I love networking, but I like networking with people who want to network. So we did, I think you were a part of some of our networking events where
yes,
people
hi right now.
Yeah, they want to network. So it's different than if you're at a place, at a conference, you don't know if that person wants to network, but you want to talk to them. It's got to be mutual because it's awkward. And there's a lot of people who will say certain things just to, appease you. Even on Clubhouse, like, oh yeah, let's connect on here. And then you reach out to them and they're like, I don't know, maybe they were just collecting followers. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to find those people, right? I mean, Jill Habro taught me that, right? Like most people are going to be pretty fantastic and they're going to want to, connect with you, but there are going to be those people who don't. And that's not an indictment on you. That's on them. They don't want to connect with you. I mean, great. Move on.
So this is Women's History Month.
Yes, it is.
Have you done anything special for it? I know last week was International Women's History Day. What does it mean to you? You're I consider you a strong woman, and I guess you could call it a man's profession is what they're trying to change it. And I was at one of Mark Moyer's events. Win Again Academy had Brandy Chastain on yesterday and was talking with I forgot, drawing a blank. Anyway, they were talking about how they need to get women's sports more visibility, more in the media. Is it Vicky Rosen? Might have been Vicky Rosen. I don't know. But I think there's a push to get equality in women's sports, and this, you're obviously involved in sports and business, and there's a lot of women who should be celebrated really for what they do, regardless. But unfortunately, now we have to categorize it as a woman, like a woman in business, or it can't just be, hey, this is Alex. She's a real great entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like she's a female entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about, talk about what it means to you, this month or this movement.
Yes. So women have been fighting for equity and inclusion, I mean, since the beginning of time, basically. We were only able to, buy houses on our own, I think in the 1950s or 1960s. We were only able to intermarry with people outside of our race in, I think, the 1970s, right? So there's been a lot of oppression on women for a really long time, right? And so there's a lot of women that have been fighting to make sure that we are actually equally protected in the world and that our voices are included as often as men's voices are included. And so for me, I have been connecting with more females in the business and sports space so that we can form a stronger union so that we can speak up for each other. Because a lot of times men don't recognize how often women are put down, not listened to, not promoted. I mean, even women's sports, the amount of coverage that women's sports gets compared to men's sports, I think women get like 4% of broadcasting coverage, something insane like that. And we have in the United States like the most winningest women's soccer team ever, and we still only get like 4% of coverage. It's like some crazy small number. So recently, this month, actually, a new company was founded by 4 female athletes, from Alex Morgan to professional snowboarders to Sue Bird, and it's called Together. And it's actually a company that is helping to promote women in sport to get more coverage, and to just kind of like start like this big movement where it's like, listen, if you don't want to put us on your broadcasting channels, that's fine. We are going to create our own stuff. And I think that's kind of what I have been learning and working toward, is to educate individuals about what it means to actually be an ally to women and people who have been systemically oppressed over time, what that actually means. It means standing up for us when we are not in the rooms to stand up for ourselves. Right. And so that's something that you do a really good job of. You are constantly thinking of ways to help other people, especially minorities and individuals who have been systemically oppressed over time. You are constantly connecting people to each other and speaking up, saying like, Alex would be great for this. Jill would be great for this. Right. We speak up for ourselves when we are in the room and we hear the things that are going on. But if we're not given access to the cigar lounge, if we're not given access to this special invitation, this here, this there in the boardroom, then how are we ever supposed to speak up for ourselves? We can't, because we're not there. So I've been talking with people to kind of explain that to them, because a lot of my male counterparts want to help, but they don't understand like what it means to help or how they can. So that's one way that I have been working during Women's History Month, to connect with women, to empower women and minorities and those who have been systemically oppressed, and educating other people on how to be our allies as well.
And what's the name of that company?
Together.
So it was Haley,
an X instead of an E at the end.
Haley Rosen was the person I was thinking about.
Okay.
It's called Just Women's Sports. And they're doing very similar things. Brandy was kind of a part of that, possibly, I think. So I assume if Alex was a part of this, you would think they'd collaborate somewhat. They're in doing the same thing. But they talked about the 4%. Look, I'm all for it. Me personally, there's a lot of women's sports I don't watch. It's not because it's women's sports. It's just I have a limited amount of time to watch sports. The U.S. women's team fascinates me because of how great they were, and just they really have some characters and some really good people.
You said you like the women's U.S. team. Did you hear? You remember that Gatorade commercial, the "Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better" with Mia Hamm and Michael Jordan?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? They're revamping that, actually, and they're doing one with Amy Wambach and Usain Bolt, and both MJ and Mia Hamm are going to be in it as well.
It's Abby Wambach.
Abby Wambach.
Yeah,
I'm not good with the names. I'm surprised I got Alex Morgan correct, because I'm always like, Alex.
No, Abby's a Gator. That's why I know.
Got you. Yeah. So they're going to be doing like a revamping of that. Anything you can do, I can do better. Right. That really cool Gatorade commercial. So I'm excited for that.
I forget who it was. There was a woman that was just in the news for breaking a record of bolts. And they were highlighting it. Man, my brain is fried here at after 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Anyway, women, I don't know that if we put 50-50 that they'd get the viewership, but I do know that they deserve more airtime.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I hear often that, women's sports are boring and people don't want to watch it and viewership isn't good. The NWSL and the WNBA are two of the only leagues during the pandemic that actually increased viewership. They increased viewership by like NWSL. NWSL was like a crazy increase. And then the WNBA was like 68% because they got more coverage. Yeah. So it was like, those types of situations, you're like, because people are like, oh, well, nobody wants to watch the WNBA. It's not growing quickly. The WNBA is hitting its 25th year, and they're actually growing at a rate in terms of viewership faster than the NBA was at 25 years.
Yeah, we hope to. I reaching out to the WNBA to try and commemorate their 25th year. But we're going to have a WNBA ex-players on the Wolff Den. WNBA, I think I saw a number that they lose about $10 million a year.
A lot of sports
Crazy.
teams
Yeah.
I mean,
it's crazy that's their.
Sports are not super. You know this. Sports can be profitable, but sports are so expensive on so many different levels, and like industries like the NCAA, they say they lose a ton of money, and then they're paying some of these coaches like crazy money, and then they're saying they can't pay athletes or they can't allow them to profit off their name, image, and likeness, and you're like, but you're tax exempt. What you mean? You don't make any money, because you do on the men's basketball tournament, but like March Madness makes you a ton of money. NCAA, what's going on?
Yeah, one of the things that they pointed out was all this money that gets thrown at leagues like the XFL and the AF and all these new leagues, but they never put together, a new league or money backing the women's stuff. I'd be interested to see. So I don't know if it could be a tournament or something, but some type of high-level co-ed athletic events. Like I know they do it in co-ed tennis. But maybe like a co-ed volleyball could be, co-ed soccer, stuff like that. I'd be interested to see at the high level, obviously.
Yeah.
Some interest in that.
That's what I think is really cool about esports as well, because I actually spoke with a NBA 2K player, and I asked him, I was like, do you care if you have individuals of different gender on your team? And he's like, no, as long as you can play, I really don't care. Right. And they have women, and they have men, and they have teams that are made up of whomever can play. Right. And so I always thought that was pretty cool. And I mean, Brittany Griner was always like, she was always trying to get Mark Cuban to sign her to a deal with the Mavs. She's like, I can play. Right.
I don't think she'd embarrass herself, but I don't know. I don't think she'd be productive, but.
Oh, I think she would.
Productive on the Mavs? I don't know.
I think she'd be productive. Yep.
I don't know if it'd be someone worth signing. Again, there's a difference between being able to play with people and not like be embarrassed to be like that person doesn't belong there, and then get in there and deserve to get more time and all of that. But I
mean, there are guys who are signed to rosters for some of the top pro men's leagues that I don't know if they should be there.
Yeah,
so, I mean, you saw, what is her name? Sarah Faulkner? Is that her name? Sarah Fuller?
Fuller, yeah.
Fuller. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's all I gotta say. The emoji that does this. I don't
know. She did well for herself. I know they're playing soccer now, so she's back to soccer.
I know Dr. Jen, she played on a men's team.
Yeah, we talked about it.
She played football, so on a men's team.
I think it could happen. I think you're better off. I think it makes more sense to have someone like Dr. Jen play football, or a female play football, because there's no alternative, right? So you would say the same thing if they have, and that's part of like the Title IX, I think, problem they have in colleges. Like if there's a basketball team for women's, then the women should play on the basketball team, right? But if you're saying I want to play football, there's no football team for me to play on, this is the only one I could play on, then I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, a lot of schools didn't implement Title IX in the way that Title IX was supposed to be implemented. So Title IX was implemented to have, equal facilities, equal treatment, right? And if there were X number of scholarships for men, there needed to be X number of scholarships athletic for women. So universities read that and they said, oh, you know what we're going to do? Instead of adding women's sports, we're going to cut men's sports that don't make us a lot of money. Yeah. So once Title IX was implemented, gymnastics teams, swimming and diving teams, men's soccer teams, men's tennis teams got cut. Instead of adding women's scholarships, they just cut men's so that there would be an equal number. I mean, that's not in the spirit of what Title IX was supposed to be done with. Also, people thought that, Black players shouldn't be playing. There's a Black league, so let the Black athletes play in the Black league. They don't need to be integrated into the white leagues. So like, I'm not saying that women need to play in a men's league. However, we shouldn't think that women are incapable of playing with the boys.
Yeah, I played.
So like, I don't know. We'll see.
I played against plenty of very, very talented women in sports. The Gators don't even have. They've never had a men's soccer team. And obviously that's a Title IX thing, right? They can't just start it. But why would the University of Florida not have a men's soccer? They don't have men's volleyball either. They have women's volleyball, women's soccer, women's lacrosse, no men's of any of that. Now, I'm not saying I feel sorry for them. I'm just saying they would probably have it if they could. But if they do that, now they have to put a women's team of some other, create one, right? And just like you said, these sports are not making money. And there's just not as many schools that have the luxury of having all these programs. So it's tough. It's really tough. Sometimes the rule is good in nature, and sometimes it backfires. It definitely needs to be restructured. That's the same thing you could say for a ton of rules in the world today.
Well, a lot of schools could also not have football. But I mean, heaven forbid that a university not have a Division I football team. You know what I mean? Like, heaven forbid they don't give up those, however many scholarships they give out per football team. I'm not saying schools should cut football, but what I am saying is people are like, well, we don't have the money to be able to. Oh, really? I wonder how much money you might have if you didn't give out so many football scholarships. I don't know. Maybe you would have more ability to give out scholarships for other sports if you didn't have these teams. I know it makes a lot of money, but also that could be an issue as well. How much are those football coaches getting paid? How much are they getting paid?
They just paid Archie Miller $10 million to leave his job at Indiana. It's nuts. Look, the football side, there's universities that football is the only one making money, and it allows them to have these other sports. So, but there are teams who've dropped football. They haven't been successful. It didn't draw. And they dropped football. I thought it was, what was the school that in Alabama maybe or Georgia that they dropped and then they came back?
Well,
UAB dropped their football and they came back.
It's about what your priorities are. What are your priorities? That's what I always say. I say follow the money, because a lot of times people will say they have X priority and they're like, ooh, but maybe that priority is not going to make us money. So like, that's not my priority anymore. And you're like, oh, okay. I see you. No worries.
Football is an interesting beast.
It is, and I really do believe
that they do use that money to fund all these other programs, which is, I don't know how you can. I mean, think about all the athletes that came from a university, especially a lot of the major ones, to say they can't have an alumni pay X amount of dollars to fund a program. It's easy for us to spend other people's money, but that's how they became who they are almost and got their money. And so, if I had that kind of money, I'd be like, yeah, I'll be the one who funds a program here or gets a better facility. And they do that somewhat.
I mean, name, image, and likeness is going to change the way in which universities are funding athletic programs. So when the Supreme Court finds that the NCAA is in violation of antitrust laws, because I do believe that's what the Supreme Court is going to find, and so does the Justice Department, and so does everyone that signed on Alston's behalf. However, I think that it is really going to change the structure of how things are funded, how athletes are able to now have businesses that have their names associated with it and they can actually make money, right? They're not going to be so beholden to their university to give them the full ride and like give them their little stipend, right? So I think the NCAA and a lot of the member schools are going to really restructure. I know they're going to have to restructure the way that they're doing things. And I think that might change the sports we see getting coverage, the sports that are making the money, all of that. I think that there's going to be a pretty interesting shift. Not sure what it's going to be yet, but it is going to be very fascinating.
There'll be a shift. It's going to be fascinating. I think it's going to be chaos. I see the rich getting richer. I see opportunity for more fraud. And I say more fraud because there's a lot of people who are cheating, just not getting caught. And then they do get caught and they don't get punished. But I'm all for athletes getting.
Universities are going to have less of a pull to some of these students for money under the table, right? Just like when people were saying like, oh, if sports gambling becomes legal, we're going to have so much more corruption. We're going to have so much more X, Y, and Z. And we found it to be kind of the opposite. So what I believe is that now that athletes are able to make money from when they're young to profit off their name, image, and likeness and not affect their NCAA eligibility, they're actually not going to be beholden to these schools to be like, oh, please, like, I need the money, I'll do whatever. So they're going to be able to actually make money off themselves. And they're going to be like, which school of yours is going to help me the most be able to create my brand?
No, they're going to have to go to the school that uses Nike because Nike's the one paying them. So it's just going to go from a.
Well, that's not how the name, image, and likeness, individuals being able to profit off their name, image, and likeness is going to work in that way. They're going to be able to actually create businesses on their own, be able to have their own sponsors that don't conflict with their university sponsors. So it's going to be, I really do believe that it's going to be a source of income for these athletes that isn't just a source of income from their school. They're going to be able to have their own deals from a young age, so they can start.
It's going to be fascinating. I do think that there's going to be more opportunity for some shady dealings because it's going to move from the school to the other people. The money's coming from somewhere, and whether it was coming from the school or someone who's back in the school or someone who has a brand or someone who has something, who knows? I don't know. I do think I agree with you. I think they should have the opportunity because they're being
yes.
They're being
they're the ones that are getting screwed the most out of the whole deal.
What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, I don't know the word I'm looking for.
But it's going to be better for the athletes. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be difficult. Anything new that comes down the pike is always very tough. Just like with NFTs, people like yesterday, I was on a Clubhouse room and people were like, well, how did Gronk do X, Y, and Z? Like, how is he able to profit off of that? They're like, well, the NFL shield is not there. There's no intellectual property owned by anyone else. And we were just talking about, like, if you're a first mover, a first adopter on something, you can set the rules, but it's also like tough, right? Because like you could be setting the wrong kind of rules. So that's going to be, it's going to be really tough with the NIL legislation.
We have my friend Ashik. He's going to be on tomorrow to talk all things NFT and baseball. He's a big baseball card collector, probably more baseball card or card trading cards than the NFTs, but he's involved in both. He's on Clubhouse all the time in those chats, and it's an interesting model.
It is.
Yeah, I think that the players have been taken advantage of. They need to go. I think part of the reason why it hasn't gone yet is because there's so much uncertainty and maybe some trepidation about what they're going to do. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I've spoken to people that are intimately involved with the NCAA and individuals within that organization for a while have been pushing for there to be some type of change to the NIL rules. And the transfer rules, because that is restraint on trade for sure. And they have been trying to push things. However, they were going to have a vote at the NCAA summit or whatever it's called in January of 2021. And they actually got a letter from the Justice Department that was like, you should wait making your decision on this until the US Supreme Court rules. And they're like, uh-oh. Yeah. Because if you guys start making rules right now, you will be in violation of antitrust rules. And so that was an interesting letter to read.
Yeah, it's coming, right? That's all we can say. It's coming, and it's I hope it changes sports for the better.
Same.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll say that.
That is the word I have been hearing in regard to NIL from everybody. Cautiously optimistic.
I'm cautiously optimistic about a lot of things. The transfer rule that you say is, look, I don't care whether I think there should be rules, but the rules need to be enforced unilaterally. It's constant, and they're just not. There's no rhyme or reason why this person has to sit out a year until we get a decision. This person doesn't have to sit out a year. Like, you can come up with a reason for almost anything, like a reason why you need to be here. And who am I to tell you that your reason is more legit than someone else's reason? It's a tough thing to say. at the end of the day, you can, there should be something to be said for sticking to where you signed, right? You're signing a contract, but it is a 1-year contract, right? These are all 1-year contracts.
There are some multi-years,
Scholarships.
but yeah, I mean, there are some multi-year scholarships, but I always tell people, like, in this situation, these players are essentially employees. Like, they're essentially employees of the university. They're treated as such. They're not categorized as that. However, I mean, I wouldn't tell you, Matt, you signed an employment contract with me. You're in an employment at Will State, but I'm forcing you to stay here and you can't move unless you sign a non-compete, which these players don't. So I'm like, if you wouldn't restrain someone from going to work at another company, you restraining them to play at another university, it's very similar. The Justice Department also believes it's very similar. And so for me, that is a restraint on trade. That's a restraint on the amount of money you can make, where you can work, all these different things. And, a lot of times you don't hear this word very often, but a monopsony is the opposite of a monopoly. So a monopsony is when there's only one real buyer of services, like an NCAA. They're essentially the only real association that you can play at as an athlete. You need to go to one of their member schools, more or less, if you actually want to be extremely competitive and generally go to a professional league, unless you want to play overseas somehow. But in the United States, it's basically the only buyer of these player services.
Yeah, but so is the NFL, NBA. You can go to a different league or a minor league.
But they have minor leagues. Like, in the NCAA, if you want to play collegiate at any level and then go to a professional team, the NCAA is the only purchaser of that. There are no minor leagues. There are no other places. So it's like a UFC. The players recently won a class action lawsuit, the fighters won a class action lawsuit against the UFC because they're claiming that they are restraining their wages and that the UFC is a monopsony. It's the only professional fighting organization in the US, and they're trying to restrain wages. And that's what they could claim with the NCAA as well. It's a monopsony. So it's so fascinating. Like, there have been so many things in the past, 5 years in the sports law world that have just been phenomenal. Like PASPA being repealed, that's insane. The NCAA Alston case, that's crazy. I mean, there's been so much stuff, like the Colin Kaepernick, the collusion with the NFL, like all of that has been just like a dream of mine. I mean, not the outcomes of what's happening in the situations, right? But it's like, wow, what a time to be alive in sports. There's so much going on.
But it's interesting, you being an attorney, and obviously I'm married to one, do you find the difference or the distinction between what should be and what is? Like, this is the law, but that doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense or it should be the law. Maybe this law should be changed. Obviously, you're an attorney, you go by the law. This is the law, we got to follow it. But now you're trying to say, look, push people to say, look, this doesn't make sense. We need to change the law. And people are all mad at these organizations and institutions when in some right, they're just kind of taking advantage of what they're allowed to do. Some gray areas, yes. So I'm a big proponent of, hey, we need to change this stuff. Not just complain about it. But I also, I don't look at everything from a legal perspective because I'm not an attorney. And sometimes you just always have that attorney's hat on.
Yeah.
You ever consciously have to turn that hat off?
Well, a lot of times I'm an attorney that recognizes that just because a law was enacted doesn't mean that it's the right law for now, right? Do I believe that the laws that prohibited interracial marriage were ever right? No, but they for damn sure are not valid now, right? They were never valid, but at some point people voted on that. That was like a law that people were like, yeah, chill, let's totally not allow this. And I'm like, thank God I was born outside of that time frame, because hot damn, I would be in jail all the time. I do a lot of black lives. I'm in the sports world, Yeah. So for me, when I recognized that, I was like, man, there are a lot of laws that have been put into place that people voted on, but they had really warped views of what was right and what was wrong and what should be and what shouldn't be. And times change. A lot of rules and regulations with the NCAA, I read through their rules and regs when I was doing NCAA compliance at SMU. I understand why some of those laws were put into place. the NCAA was originally an entity to help protect athletes from dying on the playing field. Like there was no regulation at all. And athletes were literally dying in like Yale, Harvard football games, like on the pitch. They're just like done. Right. So like I understand there are certain rules and regs that the NCAA had that were perfectly valid then, not valid now. Title IX, perfectly amazing thought process behind it. And then in action, it takes away a ton of men's sports and doesn't add women's sports. So like those are when you have to be like
spirit of the law, the spirit of the law, spirit of the law, right? Like the Second Amendment, like when you said,
and things change. People will say a lot of times like, well, that's not in the Constitution. And I'm like, you do realize we have amendments, right? Like the Constitution we follow now is not the Constitution that was originally written.
Even the amendments should be amended again.
Things have to be amended. Yeah. You're never going to get everything right for all of eternity. And that's where people need to stop being so rigid.
Yeah. Speaking of SMU, the 30-30, they went on the death. Is it me, or could you probably do that same story with a ton of colleges today, that they're probably doing this stuff? It's like, it's crazy the type of stuff that's going on that we don't even know about.
I mean, I dated a guy after he was done with university, and he was at a very prestigious Division I football program, like a beast there. He was projected to go number 1 in the NFL draft. Like, bro was real good, right? And he was real good at a young age. And I dated him after he was done with football and everything. And I was like, so just tell me, like, when you were recruited, like, how did that process go? Because he was getting recruited by the huge schools. He was getting recruited by like Ohio State, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, University of Tennessee. I mean, like everyone wanted him because he was like an All-American, McDonald's All-American, all that crap, like very high coming out of high school. And he was like, oh, well, I would go to the university. They would give me a stack of cash in my envelope that told me it would be my per diem. And the per diems are like literally how much it is for like food. It's like $50. Like it's like a very tiny amount. Like, and he was like, and I would get like, and he said like, I would get a stack of cash, right? It's like an inch and a half thick from them. And I would be told that like, I would be taken really good care of at this university. He's like, and I took all the money from the different places. And then I went to the university I wanted to go to originally.
Yeah.
Right? But for him, like he came from a background where like that money actually could really help him and his family, right? But if he had been able to, when he was an All-American, a McDonald's All-American, when he was building a name for himself in the place that he grew up in, all that, if he was able to have built a business, even be able to do autograph signings at all during that time frame, he wouldn't have needed that money from those schools. And the schools might not have had as much pull. So for me, the more I talk to college athletes, retired college athletes, NFL players, professional athletes, all these different people, they were like, yeah, if I was able to actually make money off of myself and my business, I might have chosen a different school. So it's fascinating to me.
The movie Blue Chips is one of my favorite basketball movies, and Nick Nolte has a press conference, and it's a great scene just talking all about that. Like, he asked for it, we gave it to him. He didn't ask for it, we gave it to him anyway. It's a crazy world, the recruiting. It starts at the AAU level, and Pop Warner.
It's very corrupt, yeah. And it's sad because the people that are generally losing out on it are the athletes. Like they're usually the ones that are not making any real coin, and everyone else is making money off of them. So for me, that's when I am looking to talk about changing rules and regs and legislation and different things like that, I have the athlete in mind because I was an athlete. I grew up in a house full of athletes. We had international basketball players that stayed at our house when I was a kid. Like I've always been in that world. So for me, I have seen athletes get taken advantage of by everybody, and it's sad. And it's just like, sometimes they go into school, they're supposed to be student athletes, supposed to focus on their education, as the NCAA says. And some of these guys are coming out and they're like less educated than when they went in, and they're taken advantage of, and they were being lied to, and they were being used, so it's like, man, that system seems real jacked up.
Yeah, it's changing. It will change. Um, how did you get into the USA Today writing, and how often do you do it? 'Cause that seems like a cool side thing.
Yeah, it's really fun. So I wrote a paper in law school about the NFL concussion suit before the book came out, before the movie came out, Concussion, all about Benedict Amalu and everything. And I was writing on his research back in the day. And I wrote this paper, and my law school professors really didn't find it that humorous. I got a good grade, but they didn't like see the subtle like nuances in there from like sports jokes and stuff. And my friend saw that USA Today's NFL Wire sites, it was a new affiliate of USA Today. They had just purchased it, acquired it, and they were looking for females to write because they had no females. And I was like, I'll just like submit my paper. I've never been a journalist or a reporter, but like I'll submit my paper. Hopefully they find it funny. And I get on the phone with my now boss, and he is like, man, your paper was freaking funny. I was like, hell yeah. Someone finally like appreciated my paper. And he was like, listen, Alex, we can teach you how to be a journalist. We can teach you how to write the way that we need you to write for us. We can't teach you to have the unique viewpoint that you have. So we want to bring you on staff. We want to bring you on as, you know, an independent contractor with us. And we want you to write for us. And I was like, okay. So I learned, I researched, I like read a bunch of articles, and then I started writing for them. And I used to write 3 articles a day for like a year, 2 years, 3 articles a day on the NFL and stuff. That was insane. Yeah. Now I do content production. So I create a lot of videos for them. And that's really fun. Right now it's free agency. So it's been like a little crazy. But yeah, I've done a little bit of everything for them. Voiceover, I've done on-camera videos for them. I've written, I've conducted interviews with NFL guys, like all different stuff. So it's been...
What's the favorite event that you've covered for them?
I would say that covering my 6th Super Bowl was pretty cool. Like, I don't go to the Super Bowls, but just recognizing that I had been with USA Today for over 5 years, I'd covered 6 Super Bowls. That was crazy to me. I counted it the other day, and I like wrote in the group chat. I was like, guys, the OGs here, like we've covered 6 Super Bowls now with USA Today. And they're like, holy crap. Like what? Because I remember when I was hired. I remember I was hired in February, like right before the Super Bowl. It was the Panthers and the Niners.
No.
Panthers and it was in 2016. It was the Panthers and...
Did the Panthers play the Patriots? No.
No, I can't remember. Was it the Cardinals maybe? I can't remember. I remember it was the Panthers because that's who I was covering. Like I was hired on to work with the Panthers, right? Yeah. And so I was like, damn, like now I'm seeing like Kansas City Chiefs got into it. I got to see Tom Brady like make history. There was so much stuff. And on top of that, like I had worked for the Hunt family right out of law school. So seeing the Chiefs get in it for the first time in, 50 years at that point? Like the first like 2 seasons ago, like in 50 years. Like I remember walking through the halls of the old office of the Hunt family, Lamar Hunt Jr.'s family, and like seeing like old school Kansas City Chief jerseys. And then they're like in the Super Bowl and I'm covering it. It was just like, it was a surreal moment for me.
Oh, that sounds like great. My friend writes for the Gators, and I have a couple writer friends, and they'd love to probably get a little bit more visibility and a bigger platform for their writing. Do you have a bucket list for sports that you haven't, like maybe that you haven't been to yet that you'd love to get to?
Oh, like something that I want to do or something I want to attend?
Attend.
Ooh, I want to attend an Olympics. Yeah, I've had friends in the Olympics, and I've watched my friends compete in the Olympics, but I've never been to an Olympics. So I would really like to go.
I'd love to go out of the country, but there would be something special about being in LA in 28. But I'd like to go out of the country for it too.
And I think I do want to go to a World Cup. I'm not the biggest fan of soccer, football, but like my family's Italian and Russian. So like huge soccer fans, right? Huge football fans. And my mom used to, back in the day, live in Rome and dated a guy who played for Roma. So she always talked about like going to those games and like how crazy they were. So I think a World Cup and definitely an Olympics, both winter and summer. I really want to go to a Winter Olympics as well.
Yeah, I would prefer summer over winter, but I think they both would be good to watch.
Yeah.
Last question, we ask this of every guest. Give us one person. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. You have 24 hours to spend with them. Who is it, and what are you guys doing? I'm going to make it happen for one of my guests. Today, Mark gave us Paul McCartney today. We've had a real big variety of people.
Paul
Yeah,
McCartney.
make it count. Make it count. We've had Obama and Tiger Woods and Oprah, and someone did want to meet with Trump.
Surprising. Okay. Ever since I was little, I wanted to meet Jodie Foster.
Oh, wow. Yeah, great.
Because, you know, she went back to university. I believe that she went, I forgot which university she went. Did she go to Yale and study at their film program, I believe? I think so. Ever since I was little, I just found it so fascinating that she like is so articulate, she's so well educated, and you know, she's an actress that plays a variety of roles. Like she's just such a fascinating individual because she's also rarely out in the media and in the news.
Yeah,
you know, like she's just someone that's like she's private, but she's like has so much depth to her that I would really love to.
What would you guys do? Obviously, you're pick her brain, but
oh goodness gracious. Honestly, probably just spend time like I imagine she lives in like a really beautiful house with like a stunning backyard and like a beautiful pool and like maybe ponies in the back or something. I don't know. Like this is my like viewpoint. So we would ride the ponies in the backyard. We would play croquet and then we would sit next to the pool and like eat a very nice like salad. And then we'd have like a duck for dinner or something.
I like it. I like it. I might have to join you guys. Her performance in The Accused is one of the all-time great performances.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, that's you're on the list now. So I really appreciate you coming here. Tell everyone before you go. I see we got some information below, but tell them where they can find you, how they can support you, and talk about the book that they can get, the podcast. Where can they find all that? Obviously, all the information at the website as you see below. yourpotentialforeverything.com. But
yes. Yeah, so you can reach out to me at yourpotentialforeverything.com. I also have a business consulting company where I work with small businesses and larger businesses and individuals within the sports world to help them gain clarity, precision, and confidence in their decision making. So I do a bunch of different types of strategies. So you can find out more about that on my website at yourpotentialforeverything.com. You can drop me a line there as well. Then if you want to listen to the podcast, I suggest you start with Matt Wolff's episodes in Side Hustles and Entrepreneurship series, and that's Your Potential for Everything. You can go on the website and find it wherever you get your podcasts. It's also there. You can also just Google it. And you can find my book series, which actually coincides with my podcast. I write a book for each series of the podcast that goes more in depth on everything that we didn't get to talk about on the podcast. And you can also find that on Amazon at Your Potential for Everything. I have a 5-book series now, actually. That's crazy. It's 5 books. The most recent one is all about goal setting and strategic planning, which is so important. Most people right now have given up on all of their goals and they're like, my New Year's resolutions. So a lot of people have. If you haven't, fantastic. But if you have, take a look at the book. You're going to get some strategies to help you.
Love it. I love it. Great stuff as always. Good to talk to you. We'll talk to you soon and appreciate all the support.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. See you guys tomorrow.